Welcome back to the Code. I got Rich McKeegan, aka the Scarecrow, with me. What's up, Rich?
Nice to see everyone. Still in lockdown here in the basement, but I'm doing good. I'm doing really good.
Yeah, this whole COVID-19 thing is getting ridiculous. I come to the academy every day to do these videos and stuff, and it's so weird. It's so surreal being in here when, you know, it's like, I mean, at any given class, there's 30, 40, 50 people on the mat, and you can't even find a parking space outside. And now I come here every day. It's a ghost town. So certainly weird, but everybody's going through that. And I'm excited to have this next guest on. I met Jay probably, I got to say, 5, maybe 6 years ago. I was out in Minnesota training out there, doing a class, and he was out there as well. He's a cop out there, and was part of the class with me. And real good guy. I could tell right away. He has passion about police work, passionate about jiu-jitsu. And Jay, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. So tell everybody, you run JiuJitsu FiveO, which has a pretty significant presence on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You have a website, JiuJitsuFiveO.com, I believe. And it's a really cool thing because you'll take actual videos of police altercations, and then you'll intertwine the real footage with what maybe a better choice would have been based on someone with training. How did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, you know, those actually, they have been really popular. I've been getting really good feedback on those breakdown videos. And the idea really kind of happened by accident. I just started my Instagram page probably, I think it was like last September is when I put my first post out. I had the idea for JiuJitsu FiveO for a while. You know, it started as a club at my agency, and then I kind of built it from there. But those videos particularly, I just had made one, and just like I said, kind of by accident, I edited some jiu-jitsu techniques that I was working on. I think it was the first one I did was like an arm drag technique that I was working on with one of my wrestling partners back at the gym. He's also a cop up here. And I was like, you know, that would look really good with this video that I had just saw of an officer that was trying to escort a suspect who ended up getting thrown on his head and getting punched in the face several times. And so I was using some really like just shitty editing software at the time, and I put the two together. I kind of threw it up on my page, and that got more views than anything else that I had posted. And I was sort of like, man, people, they seem to really like this. So I started looking into it a little bit more, and now that's probably, out of all the things that I post on my page, that one probably, or those types of videos, get the most views and the most engagement. I also get a lot of messages from my followers telling me that they really like those videos, that they like the fact that they're short, and you know, I'm not doing a lot of talking or any talking really in those videos. Because to me, you know, you hear in jiu-jitsu all the time, show the art, right? And so my goal with those is really just that, is showing the art. I don't feel like I need to talk about the specific technique or how to do it. My goal is really just to show people, hey, jiu-jitsu works, and it specifically works for cops.
You know, that's really great. And it's funny because I first came across your channel, it's a while ago now, but I first came across it from a non-cop Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt friend of mine. And he's like, hey, have you seen this Instagram page? This guy does a whole bunch of stuff with law enforcement type stuff, and it's pretty cool. And then he was telling me how much he liked it from the perspective of, as a jiu-jitsu black belt and a cop for a long time, I get a lot of other martial arts school owners that aren't cops trying to find out, like, hey, how do I teach cops? How do I give information to them that fits the scenarios that they get involved in if I'm not one myself and stuff like that. So he was saying how good the channel was for him, which is kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like I said, I've gotten a lot of people that have reached out to me, people I've never met in person, you know, that will send me messages and say, hey, I was watching one of your videos last night. I ended up getting in a fight on the street tonight, and I used that particular technique, and it saved my ass. You know, I get those types of messages a lot too, and that makes me feel really good because I know that I'm doing what I set out to do, which ultimately was my goal at JiuJitsu FiveO, you know, and it's been growing. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, you know, long term, but ultimately I just wanted to promote the jiu-jitsu lifestyle specifically for cops. But I think there are a lot of other people out there that, you know, have started following me and are learning new things and hopefully taking something out of it too, even if you don't, you know, work the streets every day.
It's funny because, and Rich will remember this, and if you go back to like when I started jiu-jitsu back in the 90s, and you had to like scrape, and get along to find somebody that had like a copy of Gracie in Action or something like that to see the old fights between them and the people they would bring in for the challenge matches. Or, if you were lucky enough to get some of the UFC on VHS back then, you didn't have the access to what people have now from, we got BJJ Fanatics, you've got all the different, every major, streaming service out there, channels like yourselves and people out there, all over the world. You can learn from so many, Rich has said this many times, you can learn an armbar from somebody in Australia and be practicing it that night in class. And I think that the whole visual learning thing, is really expanded these last probably 3-4 years, especially. Would you agree, Rich?
100%. It's taken off, and we've always had students who are like, well, some language barriers. And I've been, man, it's jiu-jitsu's jiu-jitsu. It's like, as long as you can sit there and watch the person snapping their finger, you can learn the technique. It's like it's the same no matter where you go. And from even when I started, which was almost 12 years ago now, it's like to see the jump in social media and the training and how fast people are getting so good. It's not the same as, a decade ago. It's like nowadays people are just becoming so good so quickly. It's incredible. How long have you been training, Jay?
This is my 9th year, I want to say. I think I started back in like early 2011. Just shortly after I became a cop. I started my career in law enforcement in 2010. So this is my 10th year as a cop. And right about like that first year mark, I was like, I really should start getting into something outside of work, because I knew that what I was being provided just wasn't enough, and I was real honest with myself at the time. I lifted a lot of weights, but I knew I didn't know how to fight. And so I had that honest conversation with myself, and so I just basically I Googled, jiu-jitsu gyms near me, and at the time I was really close to this Alliance gym where I still train at. That's where I've always trained at. It was like right down the street, so I stopped in and I talked to the owner, and come to find there was like a ton of cops that trained there at the time, and the rest was history. I signed up that day, and I never looked back. I've been training ever since. But yeah, it's funny, when I went in there too, I almost didn't start because there's I don't know if you guys have heard of Josh Janicek, JJ. Yeah. He was signed to the UFC a while back. I think he got hurt at his training camp, so he wasn't able to compete, but he's a very high level MMA guy, Division I wrestler, one of the most badass dudes that I know. But the day I went in there to check out the gym and talk to the owner, he was in there skipping rope in the back of the gym on the mats with no shirt on, wearing like little spandex shorts or whatever. And dude is just jacked, right? He's like just the most jacked dude I'd ever seen. And he's just back there jumping rope. And I'm looking at this dude. I'm like, God, maybe this shit's not for me. I don't know. But he's a great guy. Yeah, he turns out to be like one of the nicest guys in the world, like most fighters are, right? When you get to know them, because they're real confident in their abilities and everything. So
it's funny because we were actually talking about it last night with Keith Owen, is that, so many times jiu-jitsu academies are kind of known for this over the years, at least in my experience, is that you go in, they're not always, the nicest to people when they come in, or they're kind of standoffish. Not every school. I'm just saying some. I was as a black belt, I went to visit an academy, and I just walked in. I had my gi, my belt, and everything, and I was just going to stop in and train. And they literally, not one person spoke to me. They all kind of went around on the other side of the mat. They ran the whole class. I tried flagging them down, and they just basically taught the whole class. And actually, the instructor went out the back door and left. And I was like, what the hell, But sometimes, people, they go into class and they get – the way I learned in the beginning is I went to class and I literally got my ass kicked every single day. Back then they did jiu-jitsu with strikes and takedowns and everything. It was more like MMA at the time.
Yeah.
And I can just remember we wouldn't keep anyone because people would be like, I can't do this. Like I'm never, and nowadays I think there's more like organization involved. There's fundamental classes. In organized academies there are, and people kind of crawl, walk, run first. And I think you end up retaining a lot more people that maybe you wouldn't have had the fortitude you did to say, hey, I'm going to stay,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Well, and you guys were talking earlier too about how accessible jiu-jitsu is and how much or how quickly people are progressing, through the sport. And that's so true. And I think it has to do with a lot of those different classes, like the fundamentals classes, and it's kind of broken down into a pretty good system now, especially at the better academies and stuff where people can learn the fundamentals and get really good at those. I know at my gym, like we even got newer blue belts that are just tough, it kind of runs the gamut. There's no easy roles, at least at the gym that I train. I don't know I'm assuming yours is probably pretty similar.
Yeah, it's funny because there's 4 original guys here. There's Mike Rossi, Jerry Navarro, Jimmy Kodges, and myself. They kind of call us the 4 horsemen with the 4 original black belts. And we'll often say if we had like a DeLorean with a flux capacitor in it, and we went back to back in time, and we brought a blue belt, an average blue belt from today, they'd smash us back then when we were blue belts. Because the level of knowledge that a blue belt has now in the method for which they're instructed and taught, and the amount of training partners that they have access to. I mean, I remember seeing my first purple belt. I thought it was like a unicorn, I was like, oh, damn, a purple belt. I never saw one of those before, and now we go to class and you can have 11, 12, 13 of them in class. So they have such a different venue to train in that we didn't really have coming through the ranks. That's why I think you're seeing people make black belt, that 10, 9, 8, even before that mark, if they're training all the time and competing and everything else. Whereas years and years ago, that it was impossible to do that.
Yeah.
You didn't have the people to train against.
That's a good point. Yeah. Now it seems like there's just endless amount of people that you can grab,
Now, what do you think of, I think for me, jiu-jitsu, I always loved it, obviously, but the biggest thing for me is seeing how it translates almost exactly the same from training to when you do have to use it for real. Would you agree that it's just one of those arts that it pretty much looks exactly the same when you do it on the mat or you do it on the side of the road? A kimura is a kimura, a single leg is a single leg, and there isn't a lot of difference between what it looks like in training versus what it looks like in the real world, whereas other martial arts aren't always the same.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And usually the stuff that I use, I don't know if you probably agree, but the stuff that I use on the street tends to be really that basic fundamental stuff. Like you said, kimura, right? Your takedowns are usually, you might grab somebody from behind, like an arm drag to the back, drag them down at the waist, single leg, double leg, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it goes exactly like we do it on the mats. Obviously, if you're wearing 25 pounds of gear, sometimes that stuff can get in the way a little bit. But if you have a strong understanding of the fundamentals and how to execute those techniques, the gear doesn't really pose as much of a challenge as everybody thinks it might, especially those that don't train, that might watch us put out a technique video and say, oh, well, yeah, try that on the concrete. It's like, well, most of that stuff I have,
Yeah.
if we're doing it. And I've done it in gear. I've done it on concrete. I've done it in the grass. I've done it in a living room, whatever the case is. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it works. It translates. And another point too is I always encourage cops, especially, there's always sort of that thing where higher level guys don't necessarily want to roll with white belts, which I get. If it's a newer white belt, they're like, well, they're kind of spazzy. I don't want to get hurt. Or maybe you're trying to work something and you want to grab a purple belt or whatever. But if you're a cop, I think cops should train with white belts because white belts do unpredictable things that guys in the streets are going to do, right? And so if you want to simulate what a fight in the street is going to be like, or if you want to practice that over and over again, I encourage cops to always grab somebody that's new, and you don't have to kick their ass for, 15 rounds. You can be nice to them, but they're going to give you some different looks and some different stuff that maybe a higher level blue belt or purple belt or brown belt's not going to give you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny because, first of all, going back to the equipment, I agree with you 100%. I think that if you're going to train and be a cop, just train normally like everybody else for the most part, but put it through your cop filter of what you're going to really use for the real world. And if you can once a week, even once a month, get together with another officer, throw on the gear and just train for a couple, for an hour or two, just to see adaptations that it might take or stuff like that. But you don't necessarily have to wear it, consistently every class. You wear it every day as it is. You know where it all fits and where it sits.
Yep.
So, but putting it on once in a while, even getting outdoors and training in some outdoor environments, is always good once in a while too, just to mix it up. But, I think you're right. I think sometimes they overemphasize that. I mean, the thing too is, what's your kit? I mean, you could be plain clothes, you could be a patrol, you could be a TAC unit with 60 pounds of gear and a rifle slung over yourself. So there's different, there's certain levels of equipment that are either going to work or not going to work, as depending on the scenario. But a friend of ours, Rich and I, Rob Kahn, great guy, one of the original black belts from back in the day. He always says, if you want to get really good, train with blue belts all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
Blue belts all the time, and he's like, constantly like 60, 70% of the time with them, and then the other 30, 40% against people that can really push you hard, and you'll see how good you'll get.
Well,
that's a really good point.
I think what you're saying, Jay, is like with the white belts, it's like being unpredictable. It's like they haven't learned how to play the game yet, so they still don't follow the rules. But like, if you're playing the game as a higher belt, we're doing jiu-jitsu, blue belts are awesome. I think Joe Rogan said it best. He's like, blue belts were made to eat like cookies. It's like, that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
But white belts, it's like, they're like little kids who don't know what they're doing. So they just do whatever they feel is, necessary at that moment. It's like, I hate rolling with big white belts. It's like, they got like 4 stars. I'm a smaller guy. So I sit there and it's like, we have some monsters at our academy. It was like, there was one day I walked in and it was just like, what the hell happened here? Like HGH is getting passed out at the front door. It's like 50 and above. So it's like, for them, I'll steer away from them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have a whole section at our gym that we call Jurassic Park. It's in the back corner. And on Saturdays when we have an open mat, our instructors will put people into groups based on weight or whatever. And now it's like, you already know who's going to Jurassic Park. And it's all the dudes that are like 220 and up, Most of those guys are at least 6 feet tall, mostly taller. And like, there's some monsters. I'll roll with those guys occasionally just to, see where I'm at. But yeah, sometimes it's just impossible, especially if you're on your back and one of them ends up on top of you, better have a good side control game from the bottom.
It's funny. I don't really mind going with, like, we have, like Rich said, I mean, when we say big, I mean, there's probably about a dozen that are literally 6'5" and up and over the 300 mark.
Oh my God.
And they're just, and they're not like out of shape guys. They're pretty fit.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mind, but as I've gotten older, I'm going to be 48. I have backed off a little bit because you can only take so much pressure for so long, and you don't want to injure yourself. But I do. Right. I don't want to forget what it's like to be under those kind of people either. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Different body styles. Small people. Bigger people, faster. More powerful. Whatever. I think it's important to train with as many different body styles as you can, because especially for us in the street, we can't decide. There's no weight classes. We can't say, hey, I can't arrest you today. You're not in my weight class.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Now, how many guys at your agency do you have training?
Man, not many. I think other than me, there might be 2. And those guys probably just started not too long ago, because they've come up and told me, hey, I started, you'd be proud of me. I'm finally taking class. But yeah, it's not many. I'm always trying to get people to train, obviously, but you probably experience the same thing. It's like getting cops to train it's nearly impossible.
It can be. It's funny. Like, this took, we had our school, this is our 20th year. So it's, now I look at it, I say we have a lot of police officers that train here. It's the number one profession that we have. We have several hundred students, and I bet you we got a good 60 plus,
That's
law
awesome.
enforcement. Probably more than that, probably more than that. But the thing is, it took a long time to get there. And I think it's different now. I think it is a little more popular now, a little more people doing it. But we have an agency nearby that's going to have us actually do like a program for them. And they were trying to decide whether or not they should force people to do it or, not force them to do it. And I remember the administrators are finally like, listen, they're just going to do it whether they want to or not. They want to be a cop, they're going to do it. And one of the other administrators started to argue a little bit. He's like, listen, if that's the case, do we tell them they don't have to learn to do CPR? They don't have to learn to use a taser. They don't have to learn to drive a police car. It's part of their job. If they don't want to do it, then they shouldn't be here. You know,
That's a
so
great point.
that's you know, kind of the whole make it mandatory thing, like Ari's doing. You know, it's kind of like, hey, you know, there's things about the job maybe I don't like either, but I do them.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that I've never really thought about it like that before, but yeah, you're 100% right. You know, we force these guys to learn how to use their taser and OC. A lot of states still mandate baton training, which I think is insane. That's my personal opinion on it. But so why not mandate jiu-jitsu training or some type of grappling training, even if it is just like the basics, fundamental. You teach them a couple of takedowns, you know, high percentage takedowns, a couple of transitions on the ground positions, some headlock escapes, that kind of stuff. I think that would go a really long way. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I'm glad to hear that you have a lot of cops that are training at your gym though. Mine's kind of the same, but internally at my own agency, I've found it to be really hard to get people to train.
Yeah, I would say they're not all from the same place, obviously, but there's actually an agency, Glastonbury Police Department in Connecticut. They got a ton of cops that train there.
That's awesome.
They got about 50 cops, and I bet you they got close to 20 that train. Like they have a lot of cops that train, and they're not just brand new white belts. Some of them are blues and purples and stuff. So they train a lot, and a lot of them come here actually. And so there's those spots, you know, for whatever reason, somebody worked there and just had a certain, you know, personality and got people to train, and it comes from the top, I think, too, sometimes. I think some agencies still have that old school mentality. Like, you know what, you got trained in the academy, it's a checkbox. They taught you how to defend your gun. If it's not our fault, you can't remember. And, you know, we're not going to add anything else. You want to do something else, go do it on your own. And, you know, the typical cop, it's like, if I'm not getting paid to do it, I'm not going to do it. So,
exactly.
You know, you get all these different mentalities, but hopefully we can change that more. Now, do you train people at your agency, or do they use you for that?
Yep. I'm one of our lead combative tactics instructors. I've been doing that. I think I started doing that when I got my blue belt. So that would have been like 2013-ish.
Okay.
So I've been doing it a while, and we've moved toward probably more jiu-jitsu based stuff. We do a lot of ground fighting, you know, again, fundamental stuff, how to escape, mount escapes, side control escapes. We do neck restraints. So we train those quite a bit, but yeah, I really enjoy doing it. You know, our agency is about 109 sworn or so. So we got a decent sized department. And people that, you know, when we put on our in-service training, they see the value in it. We've gotten a lot of good feedback, especially on the ground fighting stuff that we've added over the last few years. You guys probably do this at your academy, but we'll do like the 2-minute drills, right? So one guy will be on top mount for 2 minutes. The guy on bottom will be there for 2 minutes. And from the bottom, your goal is just to escape. Guy on top, your goal is just to control him, right? So it's good training for both guys. If I'm the good guy, I can learn how to keep somebody on the ground in mount. If I'm the guy on the bottom, I can learn how to escape. And our cops have really seemed to like that style of training versus, you know, what we did a long time ago, where we got the foam batons out, we'd hit the bag a few times and yell, "Get back," right? And the same shit that cops and agencies have been doing for years. We've really tried to move away from that and make it a lot more realistic. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where we have to evolve. And, you know, in police work, that's like the hardest thing to do, is to get anybody to change anything, because they fall back on that. Well, this is the way we've always done it. And it's extremely difficult to get them to change their minds. I mean, I remember 9/11, on 9/11, the day of 9/11, everybody probably remembers where they were. I was actually teaching mount escapes, you know, to a bunch of guys in our police department for in-service training. And the whole time they're complaining and bitching about it, you know what I mean? Because they don't want to do it back. This is a long time ago, and used to get such resentment towards doing it. They didn't want to do it. And it took years and years and years until they finally, you know, got rid of some of the old timers, and some new blood came in, and, you know, popularization of, you know, UFC and jiu-jitsu kind of grew more, the internet and everything. People started to see, oh, this is kind of the way to do it. And now it's a lot simpler to get them to do it now, and you have more people seeking it. But you're right, it can be exhausting. And I never understood it, because I'll come to class on any given night, and I'll have an actuary in here training like their life depends on it. Right. And they'll probably never face an altercation in their life. And meanwhile, you got cops you can't get to come in, and they're guaranteed 100% to get into an altercation probably in the next few weeks. You know, and it's crazy to me.
Exactly. Well, And I have a theory on it, and you can let me know what you think about this. This is my own personal theory that I've been developing here for a little while, but I think a big reason why cops won't train on their own time and don't want to do jiu-jitsu is because when you're not familiar with it, it reminds them of police defensive tactics class, right? So we've been doing DT the same way for years. It put a bad taste in their mouth. Every time they think about it, it sucks. They have to come in on their off days. The training usually sucks, right? And so why, as a cop, do I want to go pay to do that with my own money on my own time at some gym and, roll around on the mats and do more DT? I really think that all of the bad defensive tactics classes over the years have kind of put a bad taste in guys' mouth, and they're looking at jiu-jitsu like it's the same thing, even though we know it's not, right? We know that it's way different than DT class, and there's so many other benefits that can help your life from jiu-jitsu, right? But if you've never done it before and you're from the outside looking in, I think that they view it as more DT training, and that, you know what I mean? So I think there's something to that. I
think you're 100% right, because they even within my own family, never mind, law enforcement, how many aunts and uncles and different things do I have where they'll see me at a cookout or something, and they'll, oh, you do the karate stuff, like even they don't know, like I'm like, no, it's not karate.
Right.
It's not, Mr. Miyagi's not at my place. Like, I try to explain what it is. I try to show them, and they don't get it, and I think it's very similar with cops. And I think you're right. It's one of those things where they don't understand the lifestyle of it. They don't understand the mental health aspect of it. Like, you go to all these calls and see all these horrible things, and just to come somewhere and escape from it all and get onto the mat. And, I feel 1,000 times better, no matter how bad my day was, if I get on the mat and roll with Rich or whoever and just forget about it all. And I'm not the same if I don't train.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's funny. I mean, every cop that I train with that I've talked to, they've said that exact same thing. They're like, I don't know what I would do without this, because to them and to me too, I think the mental benefits far outweigh the physical benefits. Obviously, jiu-jitsu keeps me in shape, and I get a lot out of that. But I think the mental aspect of it is really, at least now after I've been a cop for a while, that's really the benefit that from jiu-jitsu above and beyond anything else, and not being able to train these last few weeks with gyms being closed and stuff. It's sort of like you start to feel that a little bit. You're like, God, you feel like there's something missing, like you need that. But so yeah, I agree 100%. And that's part of, with JiuJitsu FiveO too, I like showing the self-defense aspect of it for cops, for sure, because we need that. And obviously it's the best system that there is for police. But I also like to promote that side of it, right? All of the other benefits that come along with training. I don't know if you follow my blog, but I did a whole article on that on my website that talks about not just the self-defense stuff, but how all of the other ways that jiu-jitsu can make your life more awesome, I think is what the title of the article was, actually.
I have seen your blog. I've read a couple of them. I'd have to go back and read that one. But there's some really good content on there. It's well written as well.
Thanks. Yeah.
But, and that's the thing I think that's important about your page as well. It's not just the videos. You've got, some thought out papers almost, nice write-ups on there that people can follow. And it kind of introduces them to that this is a lot deeper than just, and I think that's too, like a lot of these guys maybe grew up doing a different martial art. They might have done whatever X, Y, and Z martial art as a teenager or a kid, and they're judging this as the same thing almost. And they want to go in there and, block, punch, kick, do the katas and everything. And they don't understand that this is so much different, so much more laid back, so much more of a workout, so much more of a community aspect and a team atmosphere. It's actually very similar. I was telling somebody this yesterday. Being part of this academy for me is very similar to being a part of a police department or part of a SWAT team or something, because you have the same connection to people because you're risking each other. Like if we roll together, I'm risking my body and trusting that you're going to take care of it and you're not going to snap my arm or break my leg or something, and vice versa, right? There's a level of trust there. We're risking things together, much like we do on the job.
Absolutely. and the whole respect aspect that comes with it too. You know, I feel like at any gym you go to, it's pretty diverse, right? It's like you said, you have an actuary that's there, right? You've got people from all sorts of different professions, religions, life experiences, and they all come together on the mat, and you grind it out, and afterward you shake hands and you become friends. And there's just a whole level of respect, I feel like, that you develop for other people through fighting, which seems counterintuitive, right? You go kick the shit out of each other for an hour, you'd think that thered be some animosity, but as you guys know, it's all love at the end of the day. And I've actually developed some really good friendships just from you know, from being at the gym and having that camaraderie. So yeah, I agree 100%.
So do you see like where jiu-jitsu was, say, because it's going so fast and we're progressing, is that going to be the same in your field as well with police officers? I mean, from where we were 5 years ago with police officers training, where do you see it in 5 years? Do you think it's really going to take off and be a part of the system?
Yeah, I do, because I don't know if it's going to kind of be mainstream. I don't think like there's ever going to, well, I shouldn't say never, but I don't see a time where like the large majority of cops within an agency will also be training on their own time. I'd like to see that, but realistically, you know, there's a lot of other factors that play into it. But I definitely can see it becoming a lot more popular just because of the access to it. You know, there's more gyms popping up now more than ever. Like you said, we talked about all of the stuff that you can find online. Lots of videos and things that you can watch. Yeah, I definitely can see it getting bigger, and I'm going to try to do everything that I can to play a role in that.
Well, it seems like even in the last year, there's been a big movement for, you know, LEOs to start training. There's Invictus,
Yep.
and there's a few other big ones. And the push is really like starting a lot of hype, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's cool to see a lot of people kind of coming together and using social media, you know, for that, to promote the art and to show jiu-jitsu for law enforcement. Invictus has been doing a really good job with that, you know. And like you said, there's a lot of other ones out there. Blue Line BJJ, Blue Line Grappling, Blue Jitsu, the guys from Blue Jitsu Lexington. I don't know if you follow those guys.
Yep.
They got some pretty good stuff out there. Rob obviously plays a part in that. There's some really great, you know, groups through Facebook and through some of those channels where cops that train can get together and talk about different topics, private groups, I should say. So yeah, I hope that stuff continues for sure. And we can get more guys on the mat. And I really think it's just a matter of getting them to come in and try one class. That's all it takes. I don't think I've ever met someone, maybe once or twice, but someone that's come into a gym, tried a class, and then said, no, this isn't for me. I don't ever want to do it again. I don't know that that's ever happened, at least from people that I know.
Yeah, we have a pretty high retention rate once we get them in the door. The retention rate is pretty good, and I think that varies. I've had people come to us, and I'll find out where they live, and I always say, well, hey, you know, there's other academies closer to you. You're driving a half an hour to get here, and they'll say, yeah, but I went there and I checked it out, and you know, they're not organized. They don't have a curriculum. They don't have the class schedule. They don't have black belts, whatever, you know, and you know, it's not the same friendly atmosphere. And, you know, my first class, you know, they're trying to teach them berimbolo, you know, so it's, they don't see the value in that yet. So the value does come in that later when you understand the basics and you realize there's a whole big other world of jiu-jitsu in the sport realm that's fun and keeps you in shape and certainly doesn't hurt to learn. But I think that a lot of people get turned off by that maybe. But if they find the right school, I agree with you 100%. They'll stick around.
Yep. And I should have prefaced that. I think when you go to a legit school and you try a class, you're probably not going to leave. But yeah, if you go somewhere where if they're trying to teach you crazy stuff on your very first day, you're probably going to get turned off to it for sure. But that brings up another interesting point. You know, my head instructor always talks about there doesn't have to be a distinction between sport jiu-jitsu and self-defense jiu-jitsu. It could just be good jiu-jitsu, right? So, and I've found that, you know, to be true on the street as well. I think it's better to have tools and not need them than to need them and not have them. But what do you guys think in terms of like cops knowing how to berimbolo or how to, use spider guard.
Train. It's like train all of it. Have fun,
Yeah.
because it makes it more enjoyable, I think. And it's like you're going to be able to, if you're doing those moves, you're more in tune with your body. And it's like I can only see that helping you. Are you going to down bolo and handcuff someone? Probably not. But you get flipped upside down, you're on your shoulders, you're a lot more aware of where your body is and how to manipulate your body. I think it's good for you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that one of the big downfalls to regular defensive tactics training is it's so limited. There's so few things that you can focus on, and you can only do it so many times. And by the time you've done whatever technique, 15, 20 times, you're bored. You don't want to do it anymore. It's not fun. Jiu-jitsu is super fun because it's so vast, and there's so many categories. There's gi, there's no gi, there's self-defense, there's sport, there's all these, guard techniques and takedowns and throws and add in strikes and, defenses. And I mean, you could spend 10 lifetimes and you shouldn't get bored doing it. Like there's just too many avenues. And I think the more thing you can know, the more things you can experience, the more you're in tune with your body. Like Rich says, you understand, you never know. Listen, you can't say that a technique won't help you in the street. I mean, you might just end up spinning around in a certain position and something's right there for you. And it just so happens to the way you landed, it works. And now it may not be as often as something that is like a Kimura we talked about is very popular technique for law enforcement. But you know what, if it happens to be right in front of you and it works in that moment and you know how to do it, why wouldn't you use it?
Right. Well, and jiu-jitsu, I feel like also teaches, a lot of concepts. So like you said, even if the technique might not go exactly like you trained it on the mat, you understand the concepts and the principles of it, and you can adapt things to where it's a lot more universal than maybe the 5 techniques that your police department tried to teach you, last year during that 4-hour course on how to defend yourself. Right. And that's the other thing I think that, why I like jiu-jitsu for cops is because it's so universal. It has an answer to pretty much anything that you're going to experience on the street. If someone puts you in a headlock, you know how to get out of it. If someone tries to take you down, you know how to sprawl, how to transition. If someone's on top of you, you know how to escape. My problem with a lot of traditional police defensive tactics, like there's a lot of programs out there that are, it's like a system, right? And that system maybe has, let's say, 5 techniques. Admin likes it because it's cool. I can pay for this thing. They can bring it to my police department. It's all packaged up nicely. We can check that box, like you had mentioned at the beginning of your podcast. It's sort of check the box training, and we expect you to take those 5 techniques and apply them anytime that you're on the street dealing with a crazy uncooperative person. We expect that one of those techniques are used, right? It's like a package of pre-approved techniques, I like to call it. And we know that stuff, it doesn't work. You have to adapt. You have to modify stuff because people are unpredictable. They do crazy shit, right? And jiu-jitsu has answers for that. But the only way to learn that is to train it consistently. You can't just show up for an 8-hour class at your PD once a year and expect that your cops aren't going to use excessive force during certain situations or do unnecessary things because they don't really have anything else to fall back on. They were only taught those 5 techniques that you approved,
And when they did teach you those 5 techniques, it was done in a very controlled, static environment where there's zero resistance, and you learn to do it against people that aren't challenging you in any way, shape, or form. So then the first time you grab somebody for real and they tighten their arms and pull away and resist, it's like, wow, I never felt this before. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, you feel that every single day. You get used to it. You get to blend with it. It's totally different. It'd be like, I use the example sometimes. Imagine we were going to teach you a foreign language, but we're going to have a 4-hour block once a year. You're not talking to anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like, say hello. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And well, that's just it too. And when you do grab onto someone and they tense up and you're not used to that, well, what happens? You start to panic, and then you start to because they're not cooperating with you. And now all of a sudden we're playing tug of war. We start doing all this crazy stuff and reverting back to kind of our caveman tactics. And that's where things go south. And you're absolutely right. When you do this stuff at the PD and you train those systems and whatever, it's like the red man suit, right? How many of us have been in a scenario or scenario-based training? You go in, the guy's wearing the red man suit, you hit him with the foam baton, and he goes down to a knee, and then the scenario's over, or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so far from reality, and it leaves these training scars with cops. Obviously, you guys you follow my page, you see me use the hashtag train for real all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by that. Train not only, for real life, but make your training realistic. And it doesn't get, for me, as it relates to the policing world, it doesn't get more realistic than jiu-jitsu training, because you get to go up against somebody who's resisting you 100%. They're not letting you get a position on them. They don't want you to choke them. They're fighting you, right? And you can't get that with someone in a red man suit. You can't get it with a cooperative partner that's just kind of letting you do things to them. That's fine to learn the technique, but eventually you have to apply it to see if it actually works and pressure test it. And that's another one. Like when I'll put some technique videos up, and there's a lot of the internet trolls and stuff out there that want to comment and say, "Oh, that's bullshit. That would never work on me. That would never work in the street." It's like, well, okay, come on the mats and see how well you can defend against it, right? Roll with a high level black belt and tell me if that would work against you or not. So, the point being, jiu-jitsu is as real as it gets, and it simulates what we do on the street more closely than any other martial art that I know of.
I 100% agree. A friend of mine, Eli Knight, he always talks about how jiu-jitsu has the most answers to the most questions. There may be another art that has a better answer for a specific question, but overall, if A to Z, jiu-jitsu has the most answers to the most things. And
that's
I think that's
analogy.
Very, very true.
Yeah, I've never heard it put like that, but that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, it is. It's funny. We do these officer survival things at our school, maybe 2 to 3 times a year, where it's like a 3 or 4 hour event. And we do one around Christmas time, and they bring they don't have to pay anything. They show up and with an unwrapped toy, and we donate it to a local charity, whatever. And they come in, and it's for people that have never trained before. We want to introduce them to the art. And we've had people drive from Pennsylvania, Maine, New Hampshire, whatever, to come down to these things. We'll have 50, 60 cops on the mat. And it's very common during that to get, that 1 or 2, like you're talking about, with their arms folded, like, oh, this isn't going to work, whatever. And we just had it a few months ago. Rich is already laughing because this guy, nice guy, big, strong guy. And he's like, oh, it's not going to, that ain't going to work against a guy like me, that kind of thing. And then, next thing you know, he wants to actually feel it. So, you get down and you roll with him a little bit. As he gets off the mat sweating, oh, let's go again. That, was a mistake. That shouldn't have happened like that.
Right.
3 times later, he's like talking to Rich, hey, how do I sign up? You know what I mean? So until they feel it, they can watch it all day. They can see videos all day, but when they feel it, they feel the pressure. They feel that they're trapped. They can't get out. They're especially for cops. I think for cops, they're either going to never do it at that moment because their ego can't take it.
Yeah.
Or they're going to be like, shit, like you and me, like, this is a deficiency. I got to change this. Like now I can't go back on the street until I have more training,
Right.
I think that's that's like the seesaw for them when they feel that pressure.
Yeah. Well, and the ego thing is such a great point. We hear it all the time, and I think that's it probably nowhere do you see that more than in law enforcement. I mean, we're cops, right? We're all alphas or whatever. At least we think we are. And we want to be tough. We want to look tough, all that kind of stuff. And we don't want anything to kind of get in the way of, having to admit that maybe we're not as tough as we thought we were. But cops in general too are very competitive by nature. They're always looking to stay in really good shape. They're looking to be the best. They're finding ways to better themselves. So, I don't know why they don't want to apply that to the self-defense side of things, because all you got to do is try it. And if you get your ass kicked, that's okay. You can keep coming. You can come back tomorrow, and over time, you're going to find that. At least I've found, we talk about the hammer and the nail analogy, right? Sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail. For a long time, I was the nail just every day, right? And then sometimes you're the hammer. And then over time, a lot of times you're the hammer. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still the nail quite a bit.
We all are. We all are at some
Yeah.
point. There's people in here. I'll get the buzzer will go off, and I'll look up and I'll see I'm like, oh, here we go. You know, this is gonna be my moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well, and you probably, how many black belts do you have at your gym?
9.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And then
That's a question I got for you. It's like Alliance is holy shit. You know, that's a whole sea of like amazing black belts that have come out of that
yeah,
association. So, and it's like, I mean, I've rolled with Tim, and it's like he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. You know.
Yeah, I rolled with him when he was here. He was real good.
did you? Yeah, he's you know, he was a purple belt when I started. I don't know if he even had any stripes. He was just, you know, but even I remember back then as a purple belt, he was still just kicking everybody's ass. And since then, obviously he's a black belt now, still competes, all that kind of stuff. He's like probably one of my favorite dudes to roll with, just because he's a really good instructor. He knows, he can watch you do stuff and tell you exactly what it is that you're doing wrong and how you can fix it. He's really good at explaining that kind of stuff. And yeah, I've gotten to know Tim really well over the years just by training with him. He's become one of my really good friends. And but yeah, he's a dude that he just, I can't do anything against him. He just kicks my ass nonstop all the time. Occasionally I might pass his guard or something, but he'll make me pay for it.
I was watching you guys roll a few weeks back before this whole thing happened. You were like live rolling from your
oh yeah, my in my basement, my home gym.
Yeah, and he was you guys were rolling there. There's a third person with you there too, and I was like, oh yeah, look at that. It's pretty good. It's but to have people, how many black belts you guys have?
Oh man, I want to say there's like 14 or 15, and then a bunch of brown belts and purple belts. I think there's like 300 students total at our gym.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of off and on, but God, like I said, even our purple belts, we have some purple belts that I struggle with. You know, there's some really good guys there, and that's a testament to your trainers and coaches and stuff too, right? We were talking about Tim. When you get to learn under guys like him and Damien that owns my gym, you know, they're gonna make you earn your belt. They don't just give out belt ranks, right? You're gonna have to put time on the mats and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're only as good as a lot of your coaches and stuff. And I'm really fortunate to have the opportunity to train under, what I think are for sure the best in my state, if not in the Midwest. So that's been great. And like I said, I just happened to Google the nearest one by my house, and I got lucky that I fell into to an Alliance gym because their curriculum actually is really good. Obviously, it's universal across the board. If you go to any Alliance gym in the country, you know, I think their curriculum is going to be the same, and the way that they do it, I think it's a good learning style for me in terms of how they break things down. So, yeah,
that's great.
Now, you have a lot of guests that come through, don't you?
Yeah, you know, anytime people travel up here, they normally will make a point to come and train with us at our gym, and so. Yeah, we've had a lot of really good guys come through. We put on a lot of seminars.
I was going to ask, it's like, who's the seminars have got to be killer because
Lucas was up not too long ago. Lucas Lepre, I'm sure you guys know who he is.
Oh, yeah.
That dude, man, he was like the smoothest. I can't even describe his game. Like, he made things look so easy, and you're watching it and you're just sort of like, God, I'll never be at that level. You know? It's super humbling, but also really educational.
That's
but
great.
there's so many good ones. I mean, it's like you got Bruno Malfacini, Lucas, Bernardo was from you guys.
Bernardo, yep. Cobrinha.
Yeah, that's right.
The list of black belts that have come out of Alliance is incredible.
Yeah. Do we mention Marcelo? Did you already mention Marcelo?
No, we didn't yet.
All right.
Marcelo came to our school for a seminar a few years back for Rich's Black Belts for Butterflies, which is pretty unusual. I guess he doesn't do that anymore, but he came up for the event. It was pretty amazing.
That's cool.
I mean, everybody here are kind of starstruck, you know, seeing him.
Yeah, he's like a celebrity in the jiu-jitsu world for sure, man. He's Well, that's another guy. I haven't had a chance to meet him or do any seminars with him, but just watching his stuff online, he's another guy that just makes it look so easy.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's such a nice guy, like an honest to God, super nice guy when you meet him. Like you can tell, especially us being cops, right away. And you can he's definitely a sincerely nice guy. And Emily Walk, who brought him up, same thing. She's such a good person.
Yeah.
So. Well, hey, it was awesome having you on, and we'll have to do it again sometime. And if I go back out to Minnesota for any reason, I will definitely let you know.
That'd be awesome.
Out in New England ways, we'd love to have you up here.
Yes. Please come by.
Yeah, I will definitely hit you up if I make my way out there. We try to travel a lot, so that'd be fun. But no, I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, and if you do come up here, I mean, we within driving. One thing I do like about Connecticut is within a couple-hour drive, I can be in New York City, Boston, Providence, Cape Cod, the White Mountains, Vermont. Like we have literally so many cool things within a short distance to go see. It is a pretty cool place to come. And I think it's possible. We don't know 100% yet, but I think Blue Line BJJ may be having a seminar here at some point in the next year.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So and maybe even possibly Evictus. I don't know yet, but Blue Line's been talking about it with me. So hopefully that happens. Maybe you can come out for that.
Yeah, maybe I can fly out. That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We got to thank, I forgot to do it at the beginning. My apologies. We got a sponsor, justforpolice.com. Alana Galvin. She was on one of our shows a few weeks ago. And basically she's a real estate agent, but what she does is she helps law enforcement. She also does it for firefighters and military when they're looking to get a house. She walks them through the process, makes sure that they get treated properly. And she actually donates, I believe it's 20%, but don't quote me, of her own paycheck back to the actual officer when the closing happens. So super cool program, and she's supportive of this podcast. And she actually also helps sponsor our officer survival programs when we have those. So had to get a shout out to her as well. But thank you very much. And JiuJitsu FiveO, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Jay's a great guy, and he's got good content. And those belts are wicked cool, by the way.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna have to send you one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A2, black A2. I don't mind paying for it. I want to support you. But yeah, they're definitely pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks again for having me on. This was fun. I for sure would love to do it again sometime. So.
No problem. Thanks a lot, man.
All right.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Yeah, good to meet you guys too. See ya.
See you, bye.